when I was a kid, I saw Elon Musk post on Twitter and I said, I just want to be just like that guy. All right, I'll start the workshop. All right, so this is how to actually get an internship. So I'm representing the software engineering club, which I am no longer a part of. I was previously the president, but I stepped down. But I figured I'm in contact with y'all, so I'll just do it for them. Not gonna like throw it into someone else's hands. And in a way, or this is kind of like a reinterpretation of the first workshop that SEC or that like I ever attended for SEC, which is their how to get an internship workshop. Um, First, a little bit about me, if I can get the slides to go. I'm the former president of SEC. I'm also involved with other clubs on campus, like the programming team and open source club. Last summer, I worked at Verizon as a sophomore, and early last semester, I got an offer for Microsoft, so that's where I'm going to be interning this summer. There's me at the bottom, laughing with the rest of the programming team. Wait, I just skipped it. So yeah, like I said, this is gonna kind of be a reinterpretation of the original How to Get an Internship workshop, and that one's kind of more basic, like more so like beginner advice, like what is an internship, how do I apply, whatever, what do I need? And this is kind of like taking it one step further. So I have a few slides on like recapping that basic information, but also I'm kind of touching on like personal stories and personal advice that I feel like people don't talk about, and that might help people that are already kind of involved with the process. But if you want the kind of like more fundamental information, here's last fall's How to Get an Internship workshop, and we've done a few other workshops in the past 2 semesters as well. Career fair, there's an interview one which I stole the template from, and there's a technical interview prep workshop at the bottom. So this is like on the SEC YouTube channel, just like there, if you want to watch any of these. So it's not, now it's gonna play all the videos. Okay, and so this won't take too long. There'll be like a little bit of time for questions at the end. It shouldn't take too long. Because again, I'm trying not to rehash like the basic knowledge. So first section is just going to be on job postings and how to beef up your resume. The second one's specific recommendations based on what year you're in. And the third one's going to be talking about how to prepare for interviews. So just some quick review, some basic concepts for how to create your resume. So first of all, there's a lot of traps you can fall into regarding formatting. Just use a template. There's one like linked at the end of these slides if you want to use it. But I think if you know what you're doing at this point, you probably already have a template. The actual specifics don't really matter, but you know that gets rid of most of the formatting issues for you. Then a quick thing about sections. So you obviously want like an education section, a skills section, and a project section. If you have experience, like a previous internship, you definitely want that on there as well. There's some other stuff you can put in that experience section if you don't have an internship, which I'll talk about as well. And then if you don't have experience, there's some other options as well. Like I have an involvement section on mine. You can do like awards, maybe certification, something like that. Just if you don't want it to be like all projects and you don't have that experience. Another big tip, just like list your grad date and your GPA if it's above like, I don't know, 3.5 or something, because otherwise they'll just think it's bad. So you don't need that high of a GPA usually, but you want to list it. And the grad date tells the recruiters like when they should expect you to return to the company, which is like one of their goals. And then this is like the XYZ method of writing bullet points. Ultimately, what the recruiters want to see is your skills and like what came out of your skills. So the technical expertise and the results. And this is kind of like the very standard like way of phrasing it. You accomplish X as measured by Y by doing Z. And you don't have to say it quite like that, but that makes sure, I think you've probably heard like you want numerical results on your resume, and that's kind of why. Okay, onto my personal tips. So I want to talk about actual like job postings. So like looking at these job postings, what can you like learn from the actual like postings? So I think a lot of times I've been told a few times that like you should personalize your resume for postings and stuff. And I kind of thought to myself, I'm not doing that because there's so many places to apply to, and changing your resume is like so much work. I put so much work into like making this one resume. I'm not going to do that for every single place I'm applying to. I'd rather just apply to more places. And I think on one hand, that's a fair argument because, and you can kind of take like, I think you should kind of look at that point uh, like halfway. So I think there is a benefit to changing out things on your resume, and it really depends. You want to pay attention to these job postings. So first of all, um, these two examples here. So here is an Intel job posting from a few days ago. So here you can see that there's like a bunch of different locations listed, and there's also like a bunch of different teams here that like the resume will be sent to once you apply to it. And here as well, this is Apple. And if you look at like their SWE internships for Apple, it basically like tells you all these different like teams you could potentially be working on based on what's on your resume. And so what I want to say here is if you see job postings like this, which are usually for like larger companies that don't hire by team, but are just like, we're just gonna like open up applications for resumes, period. What you want to do is you want to make sure that your the scope of like the projects, for instance, on your resume cover as many different possible skills as you can. Because the idea is, I think the hard part is getting an interview in the first place for a lot of people. And what basically happens is, your resume maybe like is pre-screened or something, and then the team might look at it and say, it might be given to one of these many teams, and they'll say like, do we want to interview this person? Is it worth our time? Yes or no? And if you don't have the tech on your resume that that team wants, they're just not going to get the chance to interview you. So, for instance, if you have like 3 React projects on your resume, and like I've been guilty of this, what's going to happen is maybe like one of these teams is going to like care to interview you, like one of these different things. So what helps is taking like a broader approach. You want to make sure that all the, say, projects you have on your resume cover a bunch of different skills, because that way a bunch of different teams will be interested in your resume. And it really is like kind of strange, because speaking of Apple, like on my like sophomore year, I applied for Apple in, it was, the applications came out in like August my sophomore year. And then like at the end of spring semester that year, I just get a random email and they said like one of our teams was interested in your resume and they want to interview you, right? So because I had kind of like a more niche resume, it took that long for a team to actually be like, oh, we're a team that's building websites with React. We see you have a lot of React experience on your resume. Like, we want to interview you. All the teams that came before like didn't care about my resume because it was mainly like React stuff. And again, they didn't really care. But there's also a flip side. So some postings like this one, Java developer, they're going to be, you can see there's like one location listed here. They're very picky with what they want right here. They want Java, they want scripting languages, SQL. And the idea here is this is one team that's looking for an intern for the like specific thing that team does. So I generally say when you're making your resume, keep it as broad as possible, right? Have a bunch of different technologies and whatnot there, just so different teams can interview you. But if you're applying to a position like this, where they say, okay, we want C++, LLVM, and then like a machine learning software, that's when you want to kind of narrow down what's on your resume, and you want to say, okay, I'm going to put in my C++ and my PyTorch projects. If you have the chance to swap those things out, this is where I would recommend doing it. And it's really as simple as like for each project you make, put a set of bullet points in, have a broad resume to start. And then if there's something that like you kind of specialize in, just swap in those specialty projects. And I want to give an example here. So this was my resume as a sophomore when I was applying, or when I got an internship at Verizon. So this is kind of the stuff I'm like trying to highlight in my resume. And you can see, I have like this React Native app. and I have this cool like React website and whatnot that's hosted, and I'm really proud of this stuff. And then as kind of a little two bullet point afterthought here, I have a SwampHacks project, which I was like, I'm not super proud of this. There's not too much to talk about, but I put it on there because of the fact that it used like LangChain to do like AI training that wasn't mentioned anywhere else on my resume. And this project, it was using like LangChain to feed in Canvas documents to like a LLM and like making a front end to talk to that LLM. And when I got the interview with Verizon, it was for a team. What we ended up doing was taking a bunch of documents from Verizon teams, funneling them into an LLM, and creating a React front end to interface with the LLM. So it ended up being something very similar. And literally, the reason I got an interview for that role, for that position, was because I had this little point that demonstrated that I did have a bit of experience in that area. This wasn't my proudest project, not at all. But because, again, it was here and it was different, I put it on. And that's what I would just recommend doing. Because again, you want to make yourself as broad as possible so that a bunch of different teams are interested in you. If I
have access to slides.
Yeah, they'll post them after. And if I just put like another React project, like the team has already seen that I know React. Like that's not going to do much. But like the addition of new things is what helped me there. And okay, so there's something else I want to talk about here. So you can see here this little blurb talking about like just how many people are applying to job postings. So here it's talking about how there were 50,000 like applications, or like Roblox expected 50,000 people to apply to their openings, even though there's only like 300 slots that they're actually giving out to interns. And what I want to highlight here is like, yes, it's competitive. And so like if you look at 50,000, like sure they have an OA, right, to maybe filter some of those out. Microsoft, for instance, they don't have an OA. They just take the full pool of applicants and then they, select interviews. They don't have an OA to automatically filter people out. They're looking at the full 50,000, right? And ultimately, like, look how many people work at Roblox. It's 2,500. They're getting 20 times the number of applicants than people that like work in their company. And I'm not trying to like say this to be like, you're cooked, it's super competitive, that sort of stuff. No, what I'm trying to say is, let's say out of these 50,000 people, they're somehow interviewing, or like 10% or only 10% like get through the OA. You really think they're going to interview 5,000 people? They're not. So I think a really big tip that people don't talk about is you just should apply early. Applying early to a position raises your chances of like getting that position way more than like changing a bullet point on your resume or something like that. Because again, if they have 5,000 people to interview, they're gonna interview the first person first, and then the second, and then the third, and then a few of those people maybe will like make it through and get the position. And by the time they get, I don't know, 1,000 max in, like maybe they filled the position. So what are they going to do? They're just going to reject or ghost the remaining 4,000, even though they passed the OA. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here, is that if you don't apply early, if you apply 30 days after a job posting opens, with how many people have already applied, like it's really just the case that the company has probably already found someone. It doesn't matter if you're better than them. They came first. They're already through the process, and the company said, we'll settle for you. And then you're just going to get ghosted by the company. So a lot of times you do get that like happening where you'll apply and then you'll hear nothing. And then like months after, they're just like, we've decided not to move forward with you. Or like, we've already filled the slot. And that's just because they don't have the bandwidth to interview everyone. And so just remedying this, if you don't already, like if you haven't already seen this list of like internships on GitHub, it's like Pit CSS, Simplify. Yeah, I have it linked at the end of the presentation, but basically it is just updated with like super new, like every day with new internships that are coming out. So applying here to the roles you're interested in is your best bet, like right when they come out. And if you don't want to check GitHub every day, which I don't blame you, there's some other ways to consume this. So Color Stack, they have a bot in their Discord that will tell you when new postings are placed onto the repo. SEC has the same thing, where we just have like a channel where it shows you when these postings are made. And there's also a software that works in conjunction with the repo. And at the end of every day, it will send you the all the links to the internships that were added that day. And so what this kind of like leads to is you really want to shoot for consistency rather than just like applying to 50 internships in a day at once. It's better to maybe at the end of every day sit down and apply to 2, 3, 4. And over time, that'll build up to a lot of internships that you're getting in as soon as possible, rather than just like a bunch you did at once where the companies might not even care. And then I wanted to talk about, so like, what if you don't have an internship? Like, how do you fill out that experience section on your resume? I kind of ordered these in terms of like how much I would recommend them to how little I would recommend them. So the top one is tech-related research. So remember that the recruiters want to see like your technical skills and like the results you've achieved with the skills. So research, what you're doing is you are like in a lab applying those skills, and like by definition, like you are making results and then hopefully even maybe publishing them, right? So even if you're not included in like a publication or whatever, like you're still working with people with these tech skills and creating some sort of result. And so I think tech-related research is just a really good way to offset like not having an internship. I've never done it, but honestly, I don't even think it's that difficult if you can just like cold email professors and some of them will be interested in like adding you to their lab. So I definitely recommend that. The other one, startup/bootcamp experience. I'm also not too familiar with this, but obviously this is kind of like if you don't have an internship light, like you'll try and emulate the experience of getting the internship. I know someone, this isn't quite startup/bootcamp, but I know someone who, you probably know them, Sai, who they didn't have an internship last year. And what they did is they went to like the UF Innovate Hub and they like asked them about openings. And then they just worked with one of those
He still works.
like companies there. Really?
Yeah.
And now he's interviewing for Google.
Yeah.
And he's like team matching. So he's gonna get an internship at Google. So yeah, like it kind of like shows like even if you don't get an internship, like keeping yourself busy some way is super helpful. TAing, again, this is I'd say like these two maybe the best, like kind of adjacent experience. There it's down a step. So TAing for CS classes. I think this can like show skills because obviously if you're TAing for a course, you're going to be pretty good at it, hopefully. I think it's not so strong as for the results because like sure you're maybe like teaching X many kids or whatnot, but like you're not doing that as at a company, so they don't care as much, but it does show you know your stuff at least. Club leadership, another step down. I frankly don't think this is that influential. Because like it shows leadership skills. Does it show technical skills? Maybe. Does it show like industry-oriented results? Not really. So I think it's a good thing to put onto your resume if you have it and you don't have, or you need to fill space or something like that. But like, honestly, I would gun for these three rather than something like this. Yeah.
Okay, this might just be personal experience or whatever, but I feel like whenever I go to like
Career fair?
career fair or any of like any events,
Mhm.
club leadership seems to be quite effective.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, yeah, I'll agree with you here. I remember talking last year to like a Honeywell recruiter at the career fair, and I was like, you know, I'm only a sophomore, but like, what do you think of a resume? Like, what can I do if I want to get hired here? And they basically said like, oh yeah, this leading this club, super impressive. Like, if you did that another like 2 years or whatnot, like, we'd definitely be interested in seeing that commitment. Ultimately, I just feel like it's good to have on your resume. Don't get me wrong, but these three, I think, just show technical skills way better than this does. And so it's good to maybe like have it rather than not have it, but like really just like shooting for club experience is like the sole thing to put onto your resume, especially in like the experience category where you might like want more industry oriented things. Yeah, I don't think it'll do you that much good. And then my last bullet point here, I know a lot of people, especially people that are like coming in, put a lot of like non-CS experience. I've seen this a few times where people will be like, I worked at a barista serving coffee, um, in spring 2023. And frankly, my take here is just get rid of it. Like they want to see technical skills and results. And frankly, they don't care how many people you served coffee to in a day. That's not going to help you at their company because you're not going to be giving coffee out at their company, hopefully. So I think it's way better to just have a project or like make a project, learn a new skill, put that on your resume, increase the chance of getting an interview you otherwise wouldn't have, rather than filling it out with this effectively this that will fill up space but won't give you much else. The only thing I could like see that giving is maybe something similar to like a club leadership, where it's like working in a team, whatnot. But even there, you're losing out on the technical aspect there. So I honestly don't think it's something you should be wasting the space on your resume with. Okay, and then here's some recommendations, like year by year, on like what I think you should be doing. So a lot of times I hear like, okay, just open the repo and just apply everywhere. And I think that works in the most part. But I think a lot of times freshmen, they get told this and they just get like bad feedback and it just doesn't really help them. So what I'll say is for freshmen, like most companies just won't accept you. They don't want a freshman. They want someone who can maybe return in a year or two. So they'll just like outright reject you, and it's a complete waste of time to worry about that. I think you should definitely like whip up your resume in your first year. I doubt most people are coming in with a very well-formed resume. So getting a bunch of new skills, getting projects to just fill it out. And also that like, the experience that I mentioned 2 slides ago is going to be super duper useful. So if you fill it out, you can then apply to programs directed towards underclassmen. Again, I have a link there that you can look at them with. And because that's going to be your best bet of like companies that actually are looking for people in your range. And also, like I said, you shouldn't be wasting time for companies that are like, oh, we want someone who's graduating in 2026, right? And you're graduating in like 2028. What do? I would honestly look into people who have gotten internships as freshmen in the past and looked at what companies they've worked for. I know when I was working at Verizon, there were a few freshmen there. I know a freshman here who worked at like Capital One, for instance. So some companies will be more lenient, will be more willing to accept a freshman. And you should kind of like applying blindly, I think isn't really the best your best opportunity because you want that time to fill out your resume and rather just like looking into specific companies and trying to maximize your chances there is probably your best bet. But yeah, it's definitely not easy. That being said, I would also say you should go to the career fair because I remember like first 2 years when I went to the career fair, I would just like wait in line, go up to the people and say like, yo, what do you think about my resume? What would you change? What do you recommend I should do in the next like 1-2 years if I want to get hired at your company? Because ultimately, like if you want resume advice, like the best people to ask are the recruiters. And so yeah, I would definitely say it's still worth going to career fair, even just to talk with the recruiters, get the hang of that. So you can come back, I don't know, in a year or two, and have some more luck. It's worth it. And then I've grouped sophomore and junior here. Sophomore, I think this is like a trick most people know, but it's something like I think if you're not doing, you should be doing this, and that's decreasing your graduation date on your resume. So let's see, I'm gonna go back to mine. Okay, so this said 2026. What I'm saying is you should do, first of all, get rid of this, otherwise they'll figure out that you're lying. And just change this to 2025 if you're applying, well, not now, but like if you were in my shoes and you were applying as a sophomore. And basically because the companies want to hire the juniors that will come back in a year. And so you can just decrease your date there and that will, increase your chances of getting an interview. From what the people I've talked to, they say like if you just tell the company after your internship that you're going to be graduating a year later, like they'll just be like, whatever. They usually don't care. And especially if you have, like, I came in with most of my gen ed credits done, and it let me graduate theoretically in 3 years. Just do it. Like, literally, if you're not doing it at that point, like, you're kind of scamming yourself. And then here, again, I said consistently apply to new openings, and it's not easy with no experience, but yeah, you should expect to apply maybe like 100+ times before you get an offer. And this year, even if you don't land an offer, you can kind of reflect on what you struggled the most on. If it was landing the interviews, maybe you can think about what you can add to your resume to beef it up. If it was like technical interviews, you can practice lead code over the summer or something like that, just so you can kind of get better for the next year when you want to get that internship for real. So yeah, junior, I said, if you didn't get an internship last year, you're the one on the left. And then if you did get an internship, so you can kind of like decide on if you want to swap to kind of like a new role. If you didn't like what you're doing at your old company, you can try to apply somewhere else or for a different team, something like that. And yeah, I said applying with previous experience should theoretically make it easier to land interviews. And again, at the bottom there, if you aren't having any luck at the end of your junior year, you should look for other experiences like local companies or I think the co-ops that happen in like the fall or the spring are way less competitive. So I know a lot of people who have had luck with those as well. And then the last section here, interviews and kind of best practices there. So just to review, this is again from like the general presentation. There's two sections really you should be thinking of when it comes to the interview. The first is the behavioral, where they're basically going to ask you questions like, why do you want to work here? Tell me about a time you faced a challenge or you work on it with a team or something like that. And the number one thing here is just like you would with a technical, you have to practice beforehand. It's best even if you can do like mock interview, something like that, where you can rehearse your responses as well, just so you don't get caught off guard in the actual interview and you're ready to answer those different questions. And even if you don't know exactly what they're going to ask you, I think having a set of experiences that you would talk about that you can kind of like generalize to a few different questions is super duper helpful because again, then you won't be caught off guard and you can be like, okay, what experience do I want to talk about regarding this? And then the common advice is like the STAR method to highlight your outcomes, which stands for like situation, task, action, response. And basically the idea there is it's almost like a resume bullet point where you want to talk about like what you did to highlight your technical expertise and then why that mattered, right? The results there to highlight the outcome. And again, this is like showing that your actions had impact on the situation that you're talking about there. Because they want to know if you can have impact on the team that you're interviewing for. And the last one, this should be pretty obvious, but make sure you can elaborate about what's on your resume. If you have something on your resume, like for example, a skill that you maybe touched once, or a project that you barely helped with because it was like a hackathon project and you were like one of 5 team members, and they ask you about that and you just can't really talk about it, it's not a great look. And I think your resume should really be something you're proud of and something that when the recruiter asks you about like the portions on it in an interview, you should be happy to talk about it and happy to elaborate. And then the technical section, obviously you got to practice lead code. For the actual interviews, make sure that you're not just jumping into coding because what the interviewers want to do is they want to kind of think through your thought process as you're coding. So you got to explain this to them beforehand. You got to essentially invent your entire solution before you actually start coding it. And that will let you, what's up guys? You got to like invent your entire solution before you start coding it. And that will do 2 things. One, the interviewers will be able to follow your thought process and they want someone on their team that they can follow the thought process with. And also it'll let them help you during the interview. So a lot of times interviewers will basically be like, oh, I think you missed, an equal sign here or something like that. Or did you mean to flip that less than or greater than? And if you don't let them do this, then your code might just not work and they can't help you. And also do this while you code, because if they get lost, then they can't help you. Then they won't understand your final solution. Even if it works, they're not going to want to look at a solution that they don't understand. because that's not what they want in like their code base. Another thing is a lot of times you won't be able to run your code during a technical interview. And so here you should get used to debugging without being able to run it. So, maybe the interviewer will see a mistake in your code and maybe they'll point it out to you. Maybe they won't. A lot of times what you'll have to do is think about test cases and run them through your code. And a lot of interviewers also say, what are some edge cases here? Does your code handle these edge cases? Like, how does it do so? I remember when I was interviewing for Roblox, we had a problem about like recognizing substrings of strings or something like that. And so, the interviewer asked me like, are there any edge cases, stuff like that? And so I said, how should we handle the empty string? Should that be a substring of all other strings? And they're like, oh, I didn't actually think about that. Let's code it so that it is a substring of all other strings. So then I was like, okay, here's where we would address that in the code, and this is what we can change. And so I coded it up, and then we ran it, and it worked. And being able to recognize those, especially if your interviewer didn't even think of them, will definitely impress them. And it shows that you're kind of able to think of these different edge cases and respond to them on the fly. Okay, I'm gonna take a drink of water. Okay, and so this is my personal strategy for interview preparation. So in terms of LeetCode, you should definitely have finished like what's called like the blind 75, which I've linked it at the end of this presentation, but goes over like basic concepts. But what you can do after you finish those, like all this basic concept, you got your basic concept nailed out, Jesus, is you can actually look into questions that the company might ask you. So there's a few ways to do this. I know LeetCode Premium has a list of company-specific questions, but even if you don't have LeetCode Premium or you don't have a friend with LeetCode Premium, there's probably tons of ways to find it online. I'm in like a CS Careers Discord, which is about as weird as you would expect a Discord full of CS adults to be. But what they do have is a bot that you can like ask a company and it will list you a bunch of questions. I don't know how they get these. If it's like people that are being like, I got count primes for my Capital One interview. But either way, I think it's useful. You can just like go down these, make sure you know how to solve these. And, worst case scenario, well, worst case, you get a random question, but let's ignore that. So realistically, you'll at least kind of like know what the company will ask. Like, are they going to ask me DP? Are they going to ask me greedy? Should I expect graph questions? That sort of stuff. Best case scenario, you do a question from this list, and that's what they ask you during your interview, and then you're just set because you already know what to do. Now, don't just memorize the solution to these questions, because if you don't get it, that's not going to help you. But like knowing how to do these types of questions and knowing to look out for these types of questions is just super helpful than just going completely blind. But for behaviorals, what you can do instead, I like Glassdoor. What you can do is you can like search up like Capital One, sweet internship, capital like Glassdoor, and then it'll show you like a page of people talking about their interviews, and they'll like tell you behavioral questions, right? And again, just like with the technical ones, they might not ask you the same exact thing. If they do, sweet, you're set. But preparing a response to these types of questions will just kind of like, it'll get you in the setting where you're ready to answer the questions in an interview. And also like if they do ask you like the same exact question that you've already seen, maybe you've written a response to it, don't just like read out your response like a robot, like they're gonna know, and you don't want to like sound like a robot. So you actually kind of like want to go a little off key, make sure that it sounds genuine. But yeah, that'll prepare you for the types of stuff they're gonna ask you. And the last, I think this is like the last slide. The last tip I have here is really interviews are great because they allow you to connect with the recruiters or the people that are interviewing you that are like on the team that you're maybe going to be working on. And like I hate those, like sometimes you get like robo interviews where you just have to like record responses to questions. Those suck, but know that like when you're in an actual interview, you have like so much more freedom than those, because it's really nice to just turn it into like a conversation where the recruiter, ultimately what they're doing is they're asking about you. You're just there to like brag, right? So you can just talk about, your experiences, your projects, where you've been involved for the whole hour, and honestly, like, have fun with it, right? Um, be ready to just like brag about yourself, talk about what you're passionate about, because the recruiter's looking for that passion. When I was interviewing for Microsoft this year, my final interview, I was talking about someone on the team that I'm like, or something like that, which I'm going to be working for apparently. And they like at the start of the interview, uh, pointed out like that they saw my resume. I was on the programming team. I did competitive programming, and it was just it ended up just being like a fun talking point, right? I straight up told them like we suck. Like we haven't been to nationals in like years or anything. We haven't made it out of Florida in like any time when I've been on the team. But it's just like a great way to meet new people and get encouraged to solve these different problems and learn these new concepts. And that was something he was super passionate about. He thought it was really cool. So again, just having something you're passionate about and being able to like connect with the recruiters on that just makes the behaviorals like so much less daunting and just more enjoyable for you and the recruiter, which is going to make them more likely to recommend you. Okay, and then here's a list of resources, application links, my resume template. Here's an application tracker that someone made for SEC, where it's just like a spreadsheet. I don't think you need to use this, but I know a lot of people like to. And I think it's also nice looking back and being like, I applied to all these different positions and I finally got one offer. Some other things, intern pay, if you care about that. This is the grind 75, so this is like 75 fundamental lead code questions. There's code, which is another list of lead code questions, handbooks, and other links. So yeah, that's the end of the workshop. Any questions? This will be posted somewhere. What'd you say?
Can I get your resume?
You want my resume?
Sure.
I don't have it like printed with me.
But you have a copy of it, like.
Do you use JSON?
Yeah, I do. This is so actually. Yeah, here's my resume. Do I not have editing terms? I do. Okay. Please. I don't know. I can go over my resume if you want, but this is what got me Microsoft. All right, it's too big. Cut off at the bottom. I don't even think. All right, we'll go through it. UF, GPA, graduation date, Verizon. I just straight up like copied these. So what I did, here's another thing. When you're like doing an internship or something, like ask about the metrics that your team is doing. So like we had on our team like metrics that we were approximating. And so literally like I have like I like looked at these bullet points once. I just like typed them up. I like pasted what they gave me, typed like a intro for it. I've like not looked at them since. I don't think they're very good, but like I pasted in the metrics they gave me, so I was happy with it. TA, again, this is like that alternative experience idea. Also with Clubfinity, working on a mobile app there. If you don't have an internship, it's still good to get something.
What's the font size on that?
What's the font size, bro?
Whatever Jake.
Whatever Jake had, yeah. I adjusted some of like the margins. Like I think there's like less space here than on the template or something because at one point I was strapped for room. So you can like fiddle with it a little bit. But if you look at like the template here,
Pretty good template.
no, yeah, if you look at the template, I think it has it's nice. It has what you need. And honestly, like you don't need this template. I honestly think that any template that looks roughly like this and has the sections you want is fine. It's going to be more about, again, the types and breadth of the skills that you're putting on and how you're writing your bullet points, which matter. So honestly, like I think template, you need a resume that's fine. You don't need like the perfect template, but
Is there a reason why you removed your project dates from the resume?
would you say why I remove my project dates? Did he have project date size?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I never really thought of project as something I like worked on as like with a period of time. So like stuff where it was like, part of a club, I did that for a period of time. And, internships I did for a period of time, but I think these, I never really thought of them like that. And also like this I made in like 2 months or something. And like I don't know if they expect you to have really long dates. I just feel like recruiters don't get much out of the dates. Like they don't care when you worked on a project. They might care when your internship was or how long you've been involved with something. But I don't know. The project, unless you've worked on a project for like really long term, I don't think they really help.
I feel like if you haven't made a project in a while, if you're using sort of older projects, kind of a bad look if you.
That's true as well. That's true as well. Like this project, I made my freshman, like the summer after my freshman year. It's not even a very good project, but it's like a very good like buzzword project. So I just kept it on. I like this one. Granting billions of Android users easy product access. It's such a cheesy bullet point. But anyway.
I love club affinities, bullet points, 50,000 students, 1,000 clubs.
Because I was really sitting there at one point, like, what do I do for my bullet points? Like for any of my projects and stuff. Like I need numbers. What do I do for numbers? I'm like, I can get some big numbers in there. But yeah.
Copy pasted your metrics for club affinities.
Valid. Anyone else have questions? I'll stop the recording.
Where's this gonna be posted?
So there's a channel in the
Yeah,
Discord.
it's called Workshop